Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about roles in Reverse 1999 because we get 2 new characters every version, we got a whole bunch of Euphoria updates, and that leads to characters switching from one role to another. The role themselves changes when it comes to how to define it, and so on and so forth. We're gonna cover everything concerning this topic right now. Okay, now we have 4 different roles in this game. It's the main DPS, it's the what we refer to as the sub DPS, we have the support and the healer. Now main DPS and healer are pretty self-explanatory, and yeah, they are not too complicated to understand. A main DPS is obviously the character that deals the most amount of damage in his archetype. If you are a character and you belong, like let's say, to the Blood Ember archetype, and you are the best DPS for this exact archetype, then you gonna be the main DPS for that. Easy to understand, right? Main DPS is the character that deals the most amount of damage. Boom. Healer, yeah, of course, easy to understand. A healer is a character that does not only heal, but excels at healing the team. The main reason why you put this character into one of your teams is to provide heal. This is also self-explanatory, but there is a character in form of Kakania that makes this a little bit tricky to understand for some people, because yeah, Kakania provides heal, but it is not the main reason. The heal is not the main reason why you put Kakania into your team, and this is where things get a little bit more complicated. But all things considered, healer, that should be self-explanatory. Now things get much more difficult if we look at the roles sub DPS and support, especially the sub DPS slot, because there's even a conversation and a huge discussion going on from players about changing the name from sub DPS to something else, because nowadays sub DPS makes it confusing, as the damage output, the DPS that the quote-unquote sub DPS provides, that is not the main reason why you slot a character into this role anymore. It was so for a very long time in the past. All you had to do is you look at the archetype, you look at what characters deal the most amount of damage, right? So you have, let's say, just for example, right, you would have Nautica and Semmelweis. They belong to the same archetype, they are obviously very strong characters, and now you would, via testing, find out between these two who deals more damage. Whoever deals more damage takes the main DPS slot, and whoever does less damage than the other takes the sub DPS slot. Of course, now that we have slotted Semmelweis into the sub DPS category, into the sub DPS slot for our team, we would have to test Semmelweis against other damage dealers and against other DPS characters from her archetype to find out if she is truly the second best damage dealer for this archetype, Blood Ember, in our example here. And if that would be the case, boom, that's how you find out that Semmelweis is the actual sub DPS for her archetype. Nowadays, that is very different, because the game changes as we get new characters and the Euphoria updates. So nowadays, our main DPS characters are, first of all, more potent than the ones we had in the past, and also our support characters nowadays deal much more damage as well as the ones in the past. That leads to our sub DPSs not being in need to deal as much damage as they previously would need to, right? things changed. We have more DPS from the main DPS and more DPS from the support, so the sub DPS doesn't need to deal as much damage anymore. And now to keep it simple and easy to understand, how would we actually call this role sub DPS? How would we define it? Now I will leave this up to you here out, my explanation, and then you tell me however we should call this role. I don't know. What I can tell you is I call this role more as a joke, of course, but it is very, very fitting and 100% accurate. I call this the partner in crime, because let me show you something and let me give you a few examples. Let's take these two right here, Nautica and Semmelweis, to make our example, and let's take a little bit of a deeper look. So first of all, right, after you established that Nautica is the main DPS because her damage output is way higher than from everyone else. Okay. Now, how would you find out who you slot into the slot that we call sub DPS? And in order for you to find that out, you have to look at what Nautica exactly needs to unleash her full potential. And yeah, now you have to look at her kit and understand her playstyle, and then you will figure out that Nautica needs the following. She would profit in the best possible case from a character that fills the blood tide, increases her max HP, increases the healing that she takes, and that synergizes around missing HP percentages. Additionally, it would be optimal if the character also would take up HP to, you know, fill the blood tide and lower the HP, so that the missing HP percentage gets higher and higher, and therefore Nautica profits from this better, right? So yeah, those are all the things. Let me say that again. A character perfectly suited for Nautica would increase the blood tide, increase her max HP, increase her healing taken, and synergize as well around missing percentage HP. And now you take a look into every single character in the game, right? Or if you already have knowledge, then you take a look at every character that is also has synergy around the blood tide mechanic. And then you will realize that Semmelweis is the best character. Why? Let's take a look at her Euphoria update real quick and see what Semmelweis checks in terms of what Nautica needs. Here is her Euphoria. Now let's take a look what Semmelweis provides to Nautica. Remember, Nautica needs a character that fills the blood tide. Here, check. Semmelweis does that. Where Nautica needs a character that increases her max HP. Here, Semmelweis does that. All allies gain 10% of Semmelweis's max HP as max HP. So blood tide is filled, max HP is increased. Then we need healing taken increased as well. Look at that. Semmelweis does that. All allies characters gain healing taken plus 10%. We need synergy around missing percentages of HP. Here, Semmelweis does that. Healing taken is further increased per 10% HP missing. So every single check mark that we had for Nautica is now provided, is checked by Semmelweis. And it even gets further, you know, because she increases the damage as well, like critical hit rate, critical damage are also increased, you know, so she goes even further beyond. And now you can check yourself every single character in this game and see who checks how many check marks for Nautica, and you will realize and find out that no other character in this game comes even close to checking all these check marks that Semmelweis does. And that's how you know Semmelweis will fill the sub DPS slot in your team if your main DPS is Nautica. And now, figuring all of this stuff out and looking at it and realizing that that is actually the case, you might come up with the question of, wait a minute, this was all supportive kind of stuff. We increased the blood tide, we increased the max HP, we increased the healing taken. Like, where is the actual damage increase for Semmelweis, for our what we call sub DPS? And there we go. That's why calling this role sub DPS is confusing and not 100% accurate anymore, because she acts more of, you might call it a support, but here's why me calling this the partner in crime is more accurate, because she's not a support in the literal sense, because what Semmelweis does here is specifically catering to what Nautica needs. You know, they are specifically made for each other. The whole purpose, you might say, Semmelweis exists is to make it so that her main DPS, so that Nautica is able to unleash her full potential. And that's why I call it partner in crime. Now let me show you the other team's combinations of main DPS and sub DPS, and you will realize that what I just explained is the exact case for pretty much every single team in the game. Only the impromptu team is a little bit of an outlier. Every other team in this game is exactly what I just explained. The sub DPS is the role that complements the main DPS in the best way possible, and therefore I would call it personally partner in crime. Well, the point is, sub DPS is not 100% accurate and the role should need to be rephrased. Okay, but now on to the other examples to prove my point even further. So, alright, cool. Semmelweis, sub DPS, because she gives everything to Nautica that Nautica needs, and they are their partner in crimes. Let's look at other teams. They get Lucy as the main DPS. Why is Ulrich the sub DPS in the Dynamo team? For Lucy, because Ulrich provides everything that Lucy dreams of. Let's take this a step further. Here, Recoleta. Why is Melania the sub DPS? For Recoleta, because Melania provides Recoleta with everything that she needs and more. Why is Willow the main DPS? And how come Tuesday is the sub DPS for her? Because you know it, and guess what? Tuesday is here to provide everything to Willow that Willow dreams of. Well, I mean, okay, those are the best teams in the game, right? I already told you, Impromptu is an outlier. What about the follow-up team? Do I forget about this one? No. Geo, who is her partner in crime? Who is the sub DPS for this team? It's Pickles. Why? Because Pickles provides everything to Geo that Geo can dream of, better than any other character in this game. And you see, this is already, I can explain why this is a little bit difficult to understand, because if you now would look at Pickles individually as an individual character, then you would come to the conclusion that this is definitely a support. But no, this is actually not true, because you don't look at the character individually anymore. You look at the character in what role he fills in a specific team, in the best team that he can possibly have around him. What role does this character fill? And for the answer for Pickles is sub DPS. Why? Because of everything that I just explained, that the sub DPS is always the partner in crime and the character that is best suited to provide everything that the main DPS needs. Now we have established that our main DPS is, and you find out what your main DPS is by, you look at the archetype, you look at the damage dealers, and you find out which of those damage dealers deals the most amount of damage. That's your main DPS. For what we call sub DPS, you find out what character belongs to the same archetype and what character in the game benefits and caters to the main DPS that you use as best as possible. And now the question is, how do we go further? How do we build our team more, right? What is the support? What should a support do? How do I find out that this character or what characters belong to the support role? Very, very simple. Let's take this Blood Ember team as an example, right? If you main DPS, you have your support. Okay. Now you play these two together and you will find out what they need. What does this archetype need? What should the support provide to benefit these two, your main and your sub DPS, as best as possible? And if you take these two out to battle, you will find out that the blood tide is not filled fast enough. It's not filled quick enough. So that's how you find out that this is what your support should provide to you. And this is why, and again, this is where things get very complicated for a lot of people, because the support for this team in version 2.8 is Eternity. Because every time, Eternity's Euphoria makes it so that whenever she uses an incantation, whenever she deals damage, your entire team loses HP percentages. And that fills the blood tide. Eternity does this in version 2.8 better than any other character in the game. Now, why is this confusing? Because if you look at the game right now on global in version 2.7, then Semmelweis is the main DPS and Eternity is the sub DPS. And now people have a very, very, very hard time understanding that characters switch their roles based on either Euphoria updates like Semmelweis or through the introduction of new characters like Nautica. Because Nautica is now the main DPS for this Blood Ember team and not Semmelweis anymore. Nautica deals more damage, and thanks to Semmelweis Euphoria update, she's the perfect complement to Nautica. Already figured that out. And that means that now what we call sub DPS, this role is filled by Semmelweis. So Eternity would either completely lose her spot in the team, or she would move to support, as now her job is not to deal damage anymore at all. Her job is now solely to fill the blood tide, as Semmelweis is now Semmelweis' job, amongst many other things. That is now her job. So Eternity is not in your team to deal damage anymore. That now belongs to Semmelweis, right? And that moves Eternity either out of the team or, in this case in version 2.7, to the support slot. That's how easy it is, right? Because again, a support is the character that complements your archetype the best. Your quote-unquote sub DPS is whatever character complements your main DPS the best. And your main DPS is the character that deals the most amount of damage in its archetype. That's how easy it is to figure this out actually. Now, let me talk about this a little bit further, because in version 3.0 the character Sentinel releases. And now I see it pretty much everywhere, no matter who you ask. They slot Sentinel into the completely wrong role. They completely misunderstand what Sentinel is here for. How come that is the case? Why do people misjudge Sentinel's role? That is pretty much the same case as it is for Eternity. They see like monkeys. I'm sorry, but I have to say it like this, because the saying goes, monkey see, monkey do. And monkey see damage, monkey thinks sub DPS, you know? And that's exactly how players rank their characters. That's how they put characters into their role. And they are very, very mistaken. And why is that? You see, I just explained why Eternity moved to the support position. That is to fill the blood tide. And the true thing, the core reason, and the main thing that Sentinel excels is filling the blood tide. She has it specifically said in her kit that the blood tide that she increases, the amount of it is specifically increased. And that is already all that you have to know to slot Sentinel into the support slot and not into the sub DPS slot. Again, why? What is the support? It is the complement to the archetype. What does this archetype need? It needs to fill the blood tide. What does Sentinel do specifically? She fills the amount of blood tide. She has an increased amount. Whenever she fills the blood tide, that amount is increased. And that kicks Eternity now out of this team completely because Sentinel takes the slot. Of course, Sentinel's kit goes further. She also is more AP friendly than Eternity. She does more damage than Eternity. Told you earlier in this video that the support characters, they deal a pretty heavy amount of damage lately, you know. Many supports, most supports do that. I will give you another example in just a second. And that's what confuses people. Again, monkey see damage, monkey think sub DPS, you know, but that is not the case. And that's what I'm trying to tell you here, that this is the point. Again, main DPS in its archetype deals the most amount of damage. Sub DPS, quote unquote, that name has to be changed, is what complements the main DPS, and the support supports the archetype that you are in. You gotta figure out what your archetype needs the most, and that's how you figure out what character you use in the support slot for the team. Alright? Okay. Now, let me give you another example that undermines this, that proves, not undermines it, that proves it even further. So, let's go over all of this one more time to really hammer it in people's head right here. Jiunangje for the follow-up team. That's the main DPS, no other character in the game that belongs to the follow-up attack archetype does as much damage as Geo, so that's our main DPS. What character complements Geo better than any other character in this game? Pickles is the answer. So Pickles takes the quote-unquote sub DPS slot. Now, how do you figure out what character fits the support slot? You gotta look at the archetype. The archetype is all about performing follow-up attacks. That's why it is literally called follow-up attack team, you know. And what character excels at performing follow-up attacks? Flutterpage is the answer. No other character provides so much synergy with follow-up attacks as Flutterpage would. Whenever a character uses a follow-up attack, Flutterpage follows up on that follow-up attack with a follow-up attack. That is literally the definition of the perfect support for this archetype team, alright? She's not the sub D. You see, look, again, let me explain why this gets complicated. Because if you now would look again at the damage output, then you would realize that Flutterpage deals quite a bit of more damage, let me say it like that, than Pickles would. So why in the world is Pickles not the support, and Flutterpage is the sub DPS? Why is that not the case? I explained that now multiple times. Flutterpage does not complement Jiunangje as good as Pickles does. That's why Pickles is the partner in crime, the sub DPS, in this follow-up attack team, and Flutterpage is the support. Because why? The sub DPS is what complements the main DPS the best, and the support is what complements the archetype the best. What character complements the follow-up type attack team the best in this game? That's Flutterpage. There's your support. Okay, so far so good. We now know every single role except for the healer. Now healer, as I already said, is very self-explanatory. That is literally just a character that excels at healing. The healing is the main thing that the character does, and when that's the case, that's a healer. Now you have to also find out like what healer belongs into what team, and Yeah, we lack, like a lot of teams, they lack their very specific healer, but there are teams that have their specific healer. So let's take them as an example. You see, the Blood Ember team. They excel around having, first of all, a huge amount of max HP. Yeah, but the kicker here is that they excel around dealing more damage based around missing percentages of HP. Okay, now you already know that you would need a healer in this team. Like the perfect healer for this team would be a character that, like Medicine Pocket. Let me explain this by explaining Medicine Pocket's kit. So Medicine Pocket, that is a healer that doesn't start healing your team unless they fall to 50% HP, right? So whenever your team would miss 50% HP of their current HP, then Medicine Pocket would start healing. Before that, he or she would provide shields to your team to ensure that whenever they fall low on HP, they wouldn't die, or they wouldn't fall to low HP too fast. You know, they are not as susceptible or too susceptible to burst damage. That's why he or she also provides shields. But the main reason is that he or she doesn't start healing before your team does not fall to or under 50% missing HP. And that is perfect for the Blood Ember team because, again, they excel at missing HP percentages. And if you have a healer that doesn't even start healing before your team falls under 50%, that's obviously your best in slot healer there. And this is why Medicine Pocket belongs to the Blood Ember team. Now, of course, there are again things that make this a little bit more complicated, and especially for the healer role, Fatutu is the big reason here, because Fatutu would be the best in slot for pretty much every single team in this game, you know, but you have to build multiple teams in this game. You cannot get away by having one team or two teams. You need more. You need 4, and moving into version 2.8 and 3.0, you will need 5 different teams. So every character can only be used once. And you don't want to use Fatutu in the Blood Ember team because you need Fatutu for the follow-up attack team. She's the best healer there because she, amongst many other things, but yeah, the kicker here is for Fatutu, she also has a follow-up attack that she triggers, and she triggers this faster the more your team attacks. That means the more your team attacks, the more follow-up attacks Fatutu will actually perform. And the team that attacks the most frequently is the follow-up attack team. And that's why if you play Fatutu in the follow-up team, she would make the most amount of usage for her follow-up attack and use that very, very effectively. That heals and that cleanses debuffs, and that's the main part of her kit. And this main part of Fatutu's kit excels the best in a team that attacks a lot, and that's the follow-up attack team. And that's why you play Fatutu in the follow-up attack team. And yeah, I just explained to you why you would play Medicine Pocket in the Blood Ember team. And you see, this is how you find out what the best healer in the game is. Now again, it gets a little bit tricky because the healer role is a little bit lackluster in this game. For example, there are teams that don't have their healer, like this ultimate archetype team around Recoleta and Melania. There is no healer in this game that excels at using their ultimate, or there is no healer in this game that would provide ultimate might to this team or anything like that. So here in this team, you would need a slot in whatever healer you have at your disposal that you don't use for other teams. You would just put it into this team and then be completely fine. You know, for example, if you might not play the poison archetype team, but you have Sotheby. So Sotheby doesn't belong really to any team other than the poison team. but you don't play poison team and you have Sotheby, so boom, you put it into the ultimate archetype team, right? But yeah, what you are always looking for is for the best in slot healer for the team, and that's what you put in there. And again, the healer is a character that excels, that not only does heal. There are characters like Akanya, for example, that have heal, but they are not healers, because the heal is not what this character excels at. This character excels at something else, right? So that's how you figure this out. It's not actually too complicated, but there are, yeah, as I explained, things that scuff things up a little bit, and characters change roles. You know, I talked about everything in great detail here, so in case you forgot something or you don't understand something, then watch again or ask me something in the comment section down below. I will answer you to the best of my ability. Now, to end this video off, let me go over a very brief and a very easy to understand definition of what a role is one more time for every role. Main DPS, you look at the archetype, you see what character in this archetype deals the most amount of damage, and boom, that's your main DPS. Then you put in the sub DPS, or as I would call it, the partner in crime, by looking at what character you use as your main DPS, and then you find the character that complements the strengths of your main DPS better than any other character in this game. So a complement to a sub DPS slash partner in crime is the character that complements your main DPS the most. Then the support character is the complement to the archetype. You see what the combination of your main DPS and you look at what the combination of your main DPS and sub DPS would need the most to improve their synergy the most, and that's what your archetype needs, and that's what your support should provide to your team. So the support role is the complement, the best complement to the archetype that you play. And yeah, a healer excels at healing, and if you want to have the perfect synergy, you look at what else this character does besides healing, and you see if there is a healer in this game that not only does excel at healing, but also provides a little bit of a bonus to the archetype of your team, to the synergy of your team, like I explained with Fatutu's follow-up attacks or Medicine Pocket's healing abilities. And there you go. That's how the roles are, or at least should be defined. This is how everyone should understand what a role is. And yeah, it's of course a little bit of a guide as to how to build a functional team as well, because that is very, very important, right? You do not slot in individual characters anymore. You get your main DPS and then you build the entire team around this main DPS archetype and yeah, everything else that this main DPS needs. And there you go. I hope that was understandable. I hope that was fun and informative. And if you like Reverse 1999 content, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would really appreciate that. But until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, join the Discord, and we love this game.